Welcome to The Grounded Leader, Ayurvedic Wellness for leaders who want to succeed from a place of balance. A podcast where ancient practices meet ambitious goals to help you operate with strength, clarity, and grounded intention. I'm your host, Shweta Vikram, an Ayurvedic doctor, trauma informed yoga teacher, award winning author, mindfulness coach, corporate wellness speaker, adjunct professor, and a lifelong student of what it really means to lead with clarity, purpose, and peace. Each week, we'll explore holistic wellness, how to excel in authentic leadership, and live with balance and purpose. Let's dive in. The toxic trap of modern productivity and how Ayurveda can help. Modern time management says time is money. Ayurvedic time management says time is prana, life force. Use it wisely. On today's episode, we're joined by Lindsey Scarlata Woodruff. I hope I haven't butchered your name because this is one of my absolute favorite humans on this planet. Um, she is a certified doctor of Ayurveda AD and an amazing human being and an incredible healer. But here's the interesting part. Prior to becoming a doctor of Ayurveda, Lindsay held an award winning career in brand strategy and macro trend forecasting, leading global creative teams for multi-million dollar brands in the luxury and wellness industries for over 10 years. You can read more about Lindsay's absolutely cool bio and work in the show notes. Welcome to the show, Lindsay. So excited to have you.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be talking with one of my dearest friends and colleagues. I have enormous respect for the work that you do, and thank you for such a fun intro.
Thank you. All right, now that mutual admiration is out of the way, let's get down to work. Lindsay, you and I, we talk about everything under the sun, but we've been talking a lot about how you've been using the whole concept of Ayurvedic approach to time and energy. And one of the things that stuck with me is you've even encouraged your team members overseas at one point to practice wellness in tiniest of ways. And I think that is so beautiful. So let's dive into the Ayurvedic approach to time and energy. And what I mean by that is, how does Ayurveda divide the 24-hour day? Like not the traditional Western clock, but and how do the doshas play into it?
No, I love this question, and I think it's so interesting to bring this up in the concept of leadership in teams. And yes, to your earlier question, I have, since I fell in love with Ayurveda, one of the first things that I started to shift and saw immediate impact in was daily routine, which Ayurveda calls dinacharya. So seeing that in my personal life, naturally kind of got me excited about bringing that into work life to see what was applicable. And not to my surprise, I realized that all of these things that you would apply to your personal life apply beautifully to work and professional life. So I think what is so beautiful about this conversation is that, when we think about Ayurveda and time and the way in which the way in which it views the 24-hour day,
Right.
remember that Ayurveda really reveres circadian rhythm, the path of the sun, the path of the moon. And at the core of Ayurveda is our intrinsic tie to circadian rhythm. Whether we like it or not, our
Mm.
bodies are designed to move and to rest with the sun and the moon. Our digestion, our endocrine system, even our immune system are all biologically linked to the rhythms of the sun. And if you go a little bit deeper than that with Ayurveda, we also see that the doshas or the doshic energies are present in everything, including the 24 hours of the day. So we really can look at the day in sort of blocks of time, and then we start to see peaks and valleys, or heights and peaks and energies where the doshas are most present. And when you understand where these doshas sort of make their appearances or really have their heights or their superpower, you really can work on harnessing those energies to really maximize either productivity or maximize rest. So what we mean by this is that there are three doshas, which if you are new to Ayurveda, one of the first things that you'll learn about is the concept of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, which are the biological energies that run into our body. And each of these doshas manifest in our body. They manifest everywhere in the universe, but they also manifest in time. And in this case, in the case of a 24-hour day, we would look at Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and each of these doshas there's two parts of the day where we see blocks of time that mimic and have the characteristics of these energies. In the case of Vata times are going to mark larger transitions in energy. So we'll see, and these are times that are really heightened for creativity, heightened awareness, meditation, spiritual connection. And these times of the day are the transitions where the sun is usually coming up or the sun is usually coming down.
That's
So we would look at, oh, go ahead.
I just know that's just beautiful. Like the sun comment that you made. It's such an easy way, listeners. Just so you're just reiterating what Lindsay just said. Like when you're thinking of Vata, either when the sun is coming up or going down. That's such a I'd never thought of relating to Vata in that sense. I wanted to acknowledge that, Lindsay. Sorry, please go ahead.
No, it's beautiful. And when you think of Vata, you think of movement. You think of movement in the body. You think of movement on earth. You think of movement and change of seasons. And then every day, Vata is in charge of that transition time between, the dusk and the dawn. So it's a really beautiful and easy way to remember. And that time, the time that's actually correlated would be 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. when you're starting to shift out of night and into the day. And then again in the late afternoon, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. So these are both very subtle transition times of subtle transition in energy, if you will. And this is where you have heightened awareness in the mind. These are optimum times for creativity. And so this is a period of time where if you were going to be doing brainstorming or you're going to be doing meditation or spiritual practice, these are optimal times to really focus because you're going to harness the energies of the vata there.
So, Lindsay, I have a question here. So, I love that. And so, when you're at work, how would you use this? Like 2 to 6 a.m., unless someone works a night shift, most people are at home. But like 2 to 6 specifically, what kind of work would you recommend? Like for,
So
whether it's a busy mom or a C-suite executive or a leadership, somebody in the leadership professional or an entrepreneur, just about anyone. Like, can you give some examples of what kind of work would make sense?
Sure. So how this would translate into day-to-day life, right? So if Vata time is ideal for creativity, for spiritual practice, or for mental clarity, this could look something like this. In the morning time, you're waking up before 6. And as a leader, or as whether it's a leader in a professional environment or as a leader of your home,
Mm-hmm.
there is a period of time where the energies are quiet and you have the ability to focus the mind, think about what it is that you want to get done for the day, set an intention for the day, and really harness and gather the energies. And this is a beautiful time in the morning to do that. It really sets the rhythm for the rest of the day. And so this could be a really beautiful AM routine for any type of leader, any type of, or whether, like I said, whether it's a leader in a creative or a corporate environment, or whether it's just trying to gather and focus and calm the energies before you get your children off to school.
Mm.
The converse of that is in the afternoon with our teams. I used to run creative teams where we had a lot of branding, photography, graphic design, ideation, copywriting. So creativity was a big part of our workday. But throughout the day, there was a need for meetings, there was a need for production timeline, conversations, huddles, things like, all types of meetings, finance, budget, and then there were always creative meetings. What I found is placing our creative brainstorm sessions in the afternoon in that after lunch. So between sort of 2 and 4, that timeline, that's where I found there to be the most productive creative energy, the most productive brainstorm questions because the energy of Vata is naturally high. You've got this great movement happening in the brain, and it just translates really beautiful to creation and ideation. So from a
Fascinating.
leadership side, that's a really simple, subtle way to kind of shift or hallmark your day around the Vata times.
Okay. And so, what would be some sign of someone who's working against their natural energy flow? So, like what you suggested, and I love that. Working in the branding space, creative work is it's a big part of the work that you do. And instead of doing that brainstorming, if someone decided to do any other kind of work, right, like meetings which are not strategic or creative, or excessive movement, excessive travel for meetings, like, could you speak a little bit to that? Because in that case, the person is going against the natural energy flow, right? How would that show up in their life or well-being?
Yeah, I mean, so we could think about if we're still in the context of Vata, which is, high movement, high energy. A way that you would see, I guess maybe first address the question of like, what would that look like if it was out of rhythm, right?
Yeah.
So in rhythm, Vata is creative and visionary and full of ideation and sort of macro strategic type of thinking, big picture, futuristic kind of, up there types of thinking. When it's out of balance, you're going to see almost an excessively fast-paced thought process. You'll see high sympathetic nervous system, so you won't be dropped down in that rest and digest kind of phase. So you're going to see a really active mind. You might see a really active and jumpy body as well. And if you are trying to do some of these Vata type things during different times of the day, you're going to notice that you're not as creative if you're trying to do this first thing in the morning when the energies, whether we like it or not, of the earth are either slower during kapha time or during pitta time when they're very sharp and focused and you have a more analytical sort of sense of balance in the body or sense of energy in the body. You'll find that Vata just doesn't those Vata type creative activities don't seem to flow as well. I think one of the best ways that you can tell whether you are in rhythm or in sync with the energies of these three is whether things feel like they're flowing or whether you feel like you're having to fight. If you feel like you're struggling to come up with creative ideas or you feel like you're struggling to focus, that's a sign that you might be doing things out of rhythm, either with your body or out of rhythm with the time of the day.
I love that, Lindsay, because, I think the world that we live in, we think unless and until we invest in purchasing 5 million apps or take 5,000 quizzes online, we just don't know whether we are out of rhythm or in rhythm. And this is such a simple test to figure out. No, and I loved how you said whether you're in a leadership position in the office or at home, like a busy parent trying to get everything and everyone in rhythm and aligned and in sync and out of the door at 7 in the morning. I mean, that's the most challenging, definitely gratifying, but most challenging job. And knowing these rhythms can be so helpful. Can you talk to us? I love that about Vata. Can you talk to us about Pitta dosha? What time of the day? What kind of tasks? You know, my Pitta mind. I'm like, tell me, tell me, tell me.
I love your pitta mind. Yes, of course. So if Vata is the energy of movement and creativity and expression and transition, then Pitta is really the energy associated with transformation and productivity. And this is associated with the element of fire and water. So you're thinking about productivity and transformation both internally and externally. You're thinking of sharpness of focus, of heat, and you're thinking strength, and all of this is happening in the body and in the mind. Now, the times for these heightened energies are between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., and then conversely in the evening between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. in the evening. So, how does this translate to day-to-day life? So from a physical side, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is when, again, we talked about how Ayurveda is so intrinsically tied to the sun. So if we think about this 24-hour-a-day clock and we think about following the sun through its day, in the morning as the sun is transitioning, you have this beautiful Vata time, which is all about the subtle movement and creativity and transition. As Pitta, as the sun moves higher in the sky, during from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., the sun is at its peak. And as the sun is at its peak outside, that means the heat and the connection we have with the sun is at its peak internally as well. So you're going to see heightened transformation and productivity, and that's in the sense of digestive capacity. So I have our strongest digestive capacity and metabolic strength at that time of the day. We have the sharpness, our sharpest, our sharpest capacity in the mind is also at this time of day. And so this is a great time if you need to get things done, if you're trying to focus on budget, if you're trying to have productive, production timeline meetings, if you're really trying to harness hardcore focus productivity, this is the time of day to do it. So for example, if you have a team, you're running a team, this is where you want to schedule all of your core meetings. You want to save your creativity and your brainstorm for later in the afternoon during that Vata time. And this is the time of day where if you need to be getting things done, you get things done. This
I
is also the time of day where you want to be eating. You want to have your strongest meal.
sorry to interrupt you, but I just loved how you clarified the differences between different kinds of meetings. Because there's been a lot of research and study done around how much time these meetings take, and not all of them are necessary or as effective. And I think that could get streamlined if people had clarity around what you just shared. Like if you're going to do creative stuff, do it during Vata time, friends, in the afternoon, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. And if you want goal-oriented, productive, deadlines, strategic stuff done, it's the Pitta time of the day, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Now, Lindsay, here's my question. What happens if people try to implement that strategy? Oh, I got my second win, 11 p.m. Let's me try and do a meeting now. Can you speak to that? Because, Ayurveda, as we all know, recommends be in bed by 10 p.m. But if the Ayurvedic clock, what happens if we stay up and get that real? I don't know what that feels like because I'm asleep. I know you're asleep. But for those of you who are wondering, ooh, Lindsay just said 10 a.m. Let me just apply it to 10 p.m. I'm sure she has something to tell you.
Well, and we've all been there. I've definitely had my fair share of that when I was younger. But I think you have to think about it first from an understanding of what the energy of Pitta represents, right? What element does Pitta represent? Which is fire, fire and water. And one of the things when I think about the doshas, I think about these in sort of the context of like superpowers, right? So Vata as the superpower of movement and transition and wind and it's cooling. But you got to be careful with Vata that it doesn't blow out of control, that it's harnessed and it doesn't fly up into the sky, that you want to sort of ground it so that it can be creative but not fly away. In the case of Pitta, you really want to harness Pitta as a fire. You want to harness this fire so that it is glowing and it doesn't turn into a bonfire, right? A bonfire blows out of control and burns out, right? This is this phrase that's so ever present in modern culture right now is burnout. And I think that it would be really hard pressed to find anybody who hasn't had burnout touch their life at some capacity, whether it's through
Correct.
professional work, whether it's through parenting life, whether it's through student career. To some degree, I think we've all experienced burnout. But if you really think about that phrase, burn out, you're thinking about visually, just think about it for a second. It's a fire just either going out of control or a fire being completely completely shut out, right? Where there's no strength, there's no productivity, there's no transformation left. So now the way we avoid something like that is to pay attention to the times of day where Pitta is at its strength and to honor that and respect that. So during the day, the sun is up. During the times of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., the sun is up and at its strength. And this is where you want to harness that same energy. And when you're working alongside that energy, that's where you're creating the magic. Now, in the evening from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., the sun is down. And yes, this is a Pitta time, but the interesting part here is that this is where everything turns inward. So this is where your immune system is being repaired, where your entire body goes into repair mode. Now, digestion shuts down, but this is why sleep is so important, and not just so important, but because the sleep before 12 p.m. is so important, because at 10 a.m., at 10 p.m., whether we like it or not, the body goes into repair mode. All of the systems of the body start to repair at this time. And so when you try to push beyond that and you try to work late at night, what'll happen is you will get a second wind and you'll get that Pitta will get, it's almost like you're confusing it. The Pitta energy, you harness the Pitta energy, but that energy is supposed to be turned inward, repairing and replenishing your body. And you're basically stealing from it and you're using it to be productive. And while you may be productive on the outside, you're really doing a lot of harm to your body on the inside because you're working against what it is naturally designed to do.
Oh, wow. So, and this is beautiful because I'm thinking that something that you also said was the digestive fire, the Agni is the strongest during the Pitta time of the day. So a lot of people who might, again, I've been a smartass growing up, so I would apply that logic. I no longer can afford to be to the nighttime. But what you said was so important. Like organs cleanse themselves. That cleaning, the replenishment, all of that is going on at the evening pitta time of the day, friends. So 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. That's one of the reasons, fair to say, Lindsay, you said like one shouldn't be eating at this hour of the day because then the toxins stay in the body and the body is confused. Like, am I doing cleanup? Am I digesting? If the digestive system doesn't get a break, eventually it all comes crashing down.
Yeah, completely. And you may get a short-term gain on that meeting that you were trying to prepare for tomorrow, but you've really done long-term damage to your immune system, and your body will come back and let you know, whether it's that week or the following week. But you'll definitely see the effects. And repeated working and working outside of this circadian rhythm, right? Working outside of these timelines and not understanding them will wreak havoc on the body, and the body will definitely speak to you. And you'll see that, and when it comes back to, back to the concept of leadership and productivity, you will definitely see that. I think that there used to be, a lot of glorification around burning the midnight oil, and, and
Oh, yeah.
people used to, I think we used to really think of that as is something where we pat ourselves on the back, and I'm so tough and I'm so dedicated. But then, our mind is not as sharp the next day. And little by little, we're chipping away at our immunity, and little by little, disease comes in, and little by little, we start to get brain fog. Or in the case of abusing that pitta time, you'll start to see temper and anger. You'll start to see your focus suffer. So, a night here or there, you can live with, of course, but it's an interesting thing to sort of put in practice, test it a little bit and see what happens when I schedule different types of meetings during the day at that time during pizza time, or what happens if I'm not eating during pizza time and instead I'm eating later in the day. And you kind of test it and see what happens if my team all starts to work, and create, and really we harness our productivity and our, our focus strategy meetings at this time of day. And then we shift. What happens? And you play with that for a week or two and see the difference in the way that everybody's thinking, and you see the difference in the way that people are performing. And then you can do the same test on yourself at night when it comes to, when you're going to sleep, and how you're sleeping, and how that affects you the next morning.
I love that. In fact, you answered my next question before we go into kapha. My question was about what are the risks of ignoring your doshic tendencies when structuring your day. And I love that you suggested. And I think you and I have talked about this, Lindsay, even with the clients, our practice, just the way we show up to our clients and practice, is not my way or the highway. We are doing this because this is what Ayurveda recommends. Should you choose not to do that, you'll notice whether it feels good or it doesn't feel nourishing.
Completely. You
And I
notice.
think, and that's fair to say that's what you're saying about the dosha clock as well, right? When we pay attention to the daily rituals, when we pay attention to our doshic tendencies, when we are in rhythm with nature and circadian rhythm, we show up differently to our work and our life.
So beautifully said. Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Again, back to whether we like it or not, we are so beautifully tied to the rhythms of the sun. And Ayurveda explains this so beautifully. And yes, you show up differently, and things just fall into place. It's akin to, a salmon sort of swimming upstream. If you're when you align your day, and remember that these things are free. They cost nothing. This is really a
Mm.
matter of just shifting your day and shifting when you're doing things so that you're working with the energies of the universe as opposed to working against them. But to me, I always liken it to the effects of, working against these times is like a salmon trying to swim upstream, and that's how you'll feel. You'll feel always behind, always like everything is such an effort.
I love that. And the world that we live in, it's hard enough.
Mhm.
How this is how Ayurveda and mindfulness, when they come together, it is a recipe for seamlessness, right? So, Lindsay, I would love for you to tell our listeners about kapha dosha, because very often people are like, I'm all pitta. Firstly, I'm like, please don't take online quizzes. Everyone has a little bit of all the dosha, so that's not an accurate statement. But I've heard a lot of kaphas say, like, is that a bad thing? Does that make me slow? And it's a one-on-one client consultation. You break it down, but can you explain to our listeners, what the kapha time of the day is? What qualities are we expecting? What kind of work should people be doing or not doing during this time of the day?
Oh, kapha. I love kapha. In fact, as someone who has less kapha, as you said, we all have all three. I'm very pitta and vata dominant. So I have kapha, but it's very in very small amounts. I'm constantly trying to cultivate more. So I love kaphic energy. Okay, so we've talked about vata, the energy of movement. We've talked about pitta, the energy of productivity and transformation. And you really, you want to correlate that with fire and water. And now we get to kapha, which is really the slow, beautiful, gentle, soothing, nurturing energy. It's very earth dominant. And this is usually associated with either this gentle, slow awakening or a slow winding down. And think about this within the mind and the body. So this could be awakening the senses, awakening digestion, or winding down of the systems in the body to prepare for sort of rest and rejuvenation. So if the Vata times of day are between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning, then Kapha comes right after. And Kapha starts at 6 a.m. and then ends at 10 a.m. So they follow each other. So you begin the day with Vata, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Then we move into Kapha from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. we have that Pitta time. So this is how we think about the rhythm or the cadence of the morning. So Vata, that early, you think of the transition when the sun is just coming up, everything in the earth is sort of just waking up. That's why there's this beautiful, subtle energy of transformation. And then there's this slowness that happens after. And this is the kapha period. This is where everything is slowly awakening. And interestingly, with kapha, when it comes to morning time, one of the best ways to maximize kapha is you want to lean into it, but you don't want kapha also can accumulate, and when you accumulate too much of it, it can have create too much slowness in the body. So the idea with kapha is to try to wake up just at or just before kapha time. When we wake up after 6 a.m., you'll find that you start to accumulate more and build more kapha in the body, which looks like moving slower, feeling a little more sluggish or sleepy in the morning, and definitely a sluggish mind, sluggish body, a little bit more stiff. So the idea with kapha is to honor it and respect it, but try not to accumulate more of it. So waking up just before 6 a.m. allows you to enjoy kapha and not build too much kapha in the body so that it slows you down. When you wake up after 6 a.m., it's back to that salmon swimming upstream analogy again. You sort of wake up past that transition time. And so then you're constantly moving. You have that kapha energy that you carry with you throughout the day. And while it is beautiful, it is slow. So if you're looking to be productive, then that's not something that you're going to want to embrace. If you're looking to have a slow, gentle day, then sure, sleep past 6 a.m. and really just lean into it. But if we're talking about productivity, whether like we said in life and student career and family and corporate life, then definitely wanting to wake up before that 6 a.m. is great because you don't want to accumulate that extra slow energy. Now, at that time, things that you can do to really work with that is this is a great time of day to do a little bit of movement. So this would be an ideal time to do some stretching, to do walking. If you are someone who loves to go to the gym or someone who likes to work out or to do anything physical, this is an ideal time of the day because it helps to prevent from accumulating excess kapha. And this is really a nice balance to that kaphic energy. Conversely, in the evening around the same time, this is where our body is getting ready to slow down. So this is where you want to honor and allow that kaphic energy to sort of accumulate. So in the morning, this is where it's great to kind of get up, move. This is also where it's a great time to do some meetings in the morning too, to start building that up because it kind of counteracts some of that kaphic energy. But in the morning, when it comes to digestion, food, this is where your digestive fire is not as strong yet. As we talked about with Pitta, the digestion really is at its peak in the middle of the day as we follow the sun. So here's where if you're going to eat something before you head into work or before you're taking the kids to school or before you're starting your day, this is maybe something that's a little bit lighter. So you allow your body to wake up gently and slowly. And the moving in the morning helps to really open the body, open the channels and awaken and invigorate kapha a bit. Whereas at the end of the day, you really want to honor the beauty of that slow time after we move from Vata, the 2 to 6 p.m. things start to slow down. And this is where, if you are going to have a nice dinner, you're going to want to have it early on before it gets too far into that coffee time period, because everything's slowing down. And that means the mind is slowing down and getting ready for rest and rejuvenation, and the body and the digestive system. So, this is not a time of day where you want to sit in front of a computer and do a lot of emails or have a very high, intense, demanding meeting, because the body is naturally trying to wind down. So this is where, if you are doing anything work related, this is where you're kind of wrapping it up. You're slowly maybe taking stock of what you did that day, or maybe preparing for tomorrow, kind of looking very gently at what we need to do for tomorrow, things like that. But this is not where you want to take on a heavy project, anything super heavy lifting, high creativity, demanding, or anything strong, big financial. This is not the time of day you want to do that. You really want to honor that slow down aspect, and then you want to carry that same idea into whatever you're doing for dinner. This isn't something nice, subtle, small, slow, and you want to eat that meal before the sun goes down. So that Kaphic energy is really tied beautifully with the sun going down. As the sun goes down, everything in the body starts to slowly shut down and get ready for rest.
I absolutely love that. And I say this because, Lindsay, I'm a morning person. But we all have some mornings which just throw you off. Life happens. And if I miss my yoga practice in the morning, the way I show up to my meetings, to my clients is different. It's not like I'm a mess. Yoga teaches us don't be rigid, but Ayurveda teaches us pay attention to every day. And I noticed that, like, it's not rigid because I do have kapha and I'm pitta kapha. And I realized like that even I could have woken up early, but if I haven't moved, I am different when I show up. There's a level of lethargy, even if it's 5%. I feel like, oh, I haven't slept enough. I could have slept for 8.5 hours and it still doesn't feel enough. Versus even if I do like 30 minutes of sun salutations or, 30 minutes of walk outside, it's what you said, it's that stagnant, dull. Kapha's qualities are also, it's dull. So just it's like adding that little bit of action, adding that little bit of mobility and lightness to it. I think that helps. And I do remember, someone had said this to me, might have been one of my teachers. She's like, have you seen the birds in the evening? They all fly back home. That's kapha. Keep that. Slowly, they've the flock returns home, and human beings, we go out to start partying. So, we've all done that. A lot of us will continue to do that. And there's no judgment here. All we are saying, we're speaking from our experience. And so it's just good to keep in mind how these Ayurvedic clocks and these, the 4 hour sets work. My math is correct, right? 2 to 6 is 4 hours. Yeah, I'm that Indian who doesn't necessarily do math very well. But I do have one last question, Lindsay, before we wrap this up, because this has been so incredibly helpful and beautiful learning about the Ayurvedic approach to time and energy, especially because you are a really busy woman. You are a mom, you're a wife, you are an Ayurvedic doctor, you're an entrepreneur, you're a healer, you're an awesome sauce friend. I can vouch for that. And yet you figured out, the power of and how potent it is if we follow the Ayurvedic clock. Can you share what one small shift you've made in your own schedule with the Ayurvedic clock that has had like a surprisingly big impact on you?
Hmm. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what would be the most impactful. Honestly, I would say for me, it's waking up before the sun, waking up before 6 a.m. I notice such a big difference when I wake up after 6. I feel the slowness, the dullness
Mm.
in the body. And for me, there's something so magical. And it's whether or not I'm getting up to make lunch for my son and take him to camp, or whether I'm getting up to go and see patients. There is something so beautiful about waking up at that time. Everything on earth is quiet and still, and my mind and body just feel completely fresh and ready for a new day. And there is something, I don't know. I come back to the word magical because I feel very energized when I get up at that time. Whereas waking up later, I definitely feel dull and stagnant. So I would say out of everything, it's probably not the most popular answer or the sexiest answer because I know so many people groan when we talk about getting up early, but I have found the biggest impact in that. The other one I would say, also not the most sexiest answer, but would be eating early. That's also done wonders for productivity and the quality of my sleep. And all of that translates into how you show up with your patients, how you show up as a parent, how you show up for anything creative. I also notice a big difference when I eat before the sun goes down, and I have plenty of time for my body to kind of process that and really get into that sort of cozy, yummy, delicious rest before 10. So those would be the two things. Like I said, I know they maybe not the most glamorous, but I find tremendous impact with those, and I find tremendous impact when I don't honor those.
I love that. And I love that, how beautifully self-care is built into your daily rituals. I feel the same way. And I'll also add to that, Lindsay, that the digestion is so much different. If it's a Saturday night, we all have a life, and you go out to eat with friends or family or whatever have you. I notice even if you eat a little, there is that heaviness that stays,
Mhm.
right? Versus when you sleep early, it's like clockwork. You wake up, you go to the bathroom, you think a certain way, you meditate a certain way. It's like it's not robotic, but it's a rhythmic clock that the body sets you in.
Right.
Thank
You feel
you
like you're
so
in flow with the universe. It's hard to describe until you experience it. And then once you experience it, you go, oh no, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this any other way again. And it's so easy and it costs nothing.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. You are fabulous, and this was incredible. I'm sure our listeners are going to learn a lot from you and from this conversation. Friends, remember, Ayurveda teaches us that time isn't just money, it's prana, your life force. And when you align your schedule with your natural rhythms, as Lindsay just told us, you get more done with less burnout. If this episode and conversation and our awesome humor sparked something for you, go listen to the full episode of The Grounded Leader with Lindsey Scarlata Woodruff. And while you're there, subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and visit my website, www.shwetavikram.com, for more tools to help you lead with balance and intention. Your energy deserves it.